Today's video has been brought to you by Gamefly. Sign up today for a premium free 30-day trial specifically for my viewers, the Hectic Force, at the following URL, www.gameflyoffer.com/HMK. So there's the theory or the thought that Breath of the Wild could be a Zelda game that is at the end of the unraveled rope that is the Zelda Timeline. Now bear with me when I say this, but speculation dictates that this game will take place past all three timelines and have its story be that of a reconvergence of all three timelines. Let that settle in a little bit. Okay, now that you had time to absorb that theory, no! Something like this won't happen in the Zelda title for numerous reasons. Not to seem like I'm putting down those who had this thought, because it's a relatively popular subject in my feed constantly, but come on, if I had a week I probably couldn't list all the reasons why something like this wouldn't work. So what I'm gonna do is post my rebuttal listing the most common and biggest detractors and inhibitors that keeps this belief from becoming a reality. First is the general understanding of multiverse theory. The Zelda Timeline split is a prime example and application of the multiverse theory. It states that theoretically all of time and space is comprised of finite or infinite universes that exist and run parallel to each other, all with boundless possibilities. Further hypothesis of the multiverse theory is the notion of how time travel would affect it. In a situation of time travel, or messing around with time in general, when a pivotal moment is made by an individual or an event, or any type of choice, it creates another universe through the outcome that may have led to another that runs parallel in time to the so-called original. So Link going backwards and forward in time and leading up to the final battle with Ganon in Ocarina of Time creates three different possible outcomes that all play out alongside each other as parallel universes, each with different versions of our beloved characters and settings, and radically different fates for each. So when addressing each timeline, adult, child, and downfall, we're really addressing them as separate universes, all equally important and pivotal to the games. As they are separate universes, it's not like they can find a point in each of their futures to recombine into one. It just doesn't work like that. To put it in a way that will make it a bit more understandable, it's like the root of a tree. The root splits, and each split spreads out and takes their own course, unable to recombine with another. Hyrule's fate in all three are so different, there is no way they can fall back into place on top of each other. That being said, this is looking at the situation from a supposed natural point of view, in which the timelines can't possibly recombine on their own. But what if there was a force great enough to accomplish this feat? Well, that goes into my next point. Second is the lack of potential sci-fi and magic in the Zelda series that can even come close to make this a reality. They can't really recombine naturally, right? So the argument is that what if they use a power to do so? Well, that still wouldn't work, as there is no power in the Legend of Zelda series or any amount of sci-fi that exists within their universe or a multiverse that could achieve this. Not even the power of the Triforce will be able to achieve such a feat. Sure, it could bend reality and grant the wishes of one's most deepest desires, but even it has its own limits, as we've seen that wielders of the entire Triforce can and have been defeated by different means, despite it being all powerful, and every wish ever granted by the Triforce has always been contained to scale when compared to the potential feat of combining universes. In short, the Triforce seems to be solely bound to the rules of its current universe, and since all timelines have had a prevalent Triforce, it is safe to say that its existence can't overrule another's, as the Triforce is the foundation of the world in each game, and tampering with it can lead to catastrophe. And before you guys bring up Hyrule Warriors and Hyrule Warriors Legends, one, the entirety of the original Hyrule Warriors took place theoretically on the child timeline and had time bended to that universe. And two, Hyrule Warriors Legends incorporate the adult timeline as well, breaking the first point, but at the end of the day, these games are not canon in any aspect. Additionally, for the idea to even get off the ground, it will require an entity within one of the universes to be aware of the parallel universes that run alongside each other in order to try and do something about it, even if the Triforce was able to accomplish a wish like this. The only person who would have direct knowledge of the parallel universes would be the hero of time, Link from Ocarina of Time. So to that end, he would have no reason to try and repair the timelines, as he returned to his original time and averted the crisis that plagued the other two. His his timeline became safe. To him and the other versions of the characters that existed in the child timeline, that's all that mattered. So what would be the advantage in combining the timelines? The most notable hints to other existing universes in the Zelda games take place in the child timeline, with virtually no inclinations in the other timelines that suggest that there is a multiverse. The adult timeline may have had a hint in the advent of the missing hero of time, but the people of that universe would have to put that together on their own, and by the time they could do anything, Hyrule was already on the fast track to getting smoked. So the supposed knowledge of that was already lost. With that, this is tackling an issue looking in from the universe of The Legend of Zelda, but what about the perspective of the creators of the series? Nintendo and the developers of the games would have this done? Well, how would we approach a question like this? Let's take a little break. I know you guys are going to be waiting for Breath of the Wild a little too long, but in the meantime, you should check out Gamefly. For those who are checking out HMK, Gamefly is offering a premium free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Gamefly has over 8,000 titles to choose from. Rent one out till you're finished and send it back when you're done. This really comes in handy if you're iffy on a game. And hey, if you like a game so much, you can keep it for one low charge. And remember, you can cancel at any time. To get your free trial today, go to gameflyoffer.com/HMK. Again, that's gameflyoffer.com/HMK for your free 30-day trial. Alright, break time's over, let's get back into it. Third is Nintendo's own understanding of the series and what the timeline means for the series in game and out. It is highly disputed among the Zelda community as to why the Zelda chronology was made, and what the factoring decision to the Zelda timeline split was. Well, what is known is that Nintendo has had a timeline in mind for a long time now, but the timeline itself is not a driving force behind the development of Zelda games. Well, save for Skyward Sword, as being the first game in the timeline was a strong driving force. Other than that, the placement of the games being developed by Nintendo was always an afterthought for the developers, placing the game in the timeline well underway development, if not one of the last steps of the game's completion. So the notion that Nintendo would consider something as radical as combining all the timelines for a game seems pretty out of the question. Also, it would be detrimental to the development of future games. Yeah, sure, you can use the argument that Nintendo could just create games between stories of the chronology. That would fill up some much needed holes in the grand story of Zelda, but you can only inflate the timeline so much without going forward. So not only will combining all three timelines back into a reunified timeline would be extremely hard to pull off, but it will create a hugely unnecessary inhibitor on Nintendo for creating future installments of the Zelda series, as the three timelines being separate grants Nintendo nearly limitless possibilities in direction that the Zelda series can produce and innovate in terms of gameplay, story, setting, and more. And honestly, that could be one of the biggest reasons why a timeline split happened on Nintendo's part, to have a lot more freedom with where the games go. Okay, now we got that out of the way, it's time to tackle the biggest question when talking about a reunified Zelda timeline. Fourth, what would be the point? Other than the statement of, hey, wouldn't it be cool? No! Like, what would be the legitimate point in recombining three separate universes of The Legend of Zelda after the timeline split back into one? Just by saying that it'll be cool isn't good enough. Is it because people want to see an amalgamation of all things Zelda that can coexist into one game? You have Hyrule Warriors for that! Every game in the series is tied or linked to each other through similarities and elements that define what Zelda is. Not to mention the lore of the time before and after the games. Yet they were all set apart by their own defining features and story elements that are exclusive to individual timelines. This is both from a personal and logical view on the matter when considering the future of Zelda's history. I wouldn't want to have some convoluted and forced explanation on why something like this could happen in Breath of the Wild if something like this was even considered. A reunified timeline would be extremely detrimental to Nintendo's efforts in creating Zelda games in expanded directions. Sure, it could simplify the timeline for many people, but Zelda has never been a straightforward legend, and that's the beauty of its storyline, weaved in many directions, left many possibilities open to the imagination. Honestly, I don't see an advantage in this happening. In conclusion, something like this can't happen. Something like this won't happen, and something like this shouldn't happen. But honestly, I can't blame the people who would consider this a possibility, as from what we've seen with Breath of the Wild, there are many callbacks and elements from all timelines in this game, so it isn't a proposal that rose from nothing. But in the end, only the heralds of creation can be the ones to truly be able to do anything of this sort. Those that exist on a higher plane of existence than the universes of the timelines in Zelda. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's a good idea to try and recombine all three timelines back into one for a reunified timeline? Do you think it's out of the question? Do you think it's a good theory? Do you think it's a good your thought. Do you think it's something that shouldn't even be attempted? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. And while you're at it, please subscribe to HMK for more Zelda and Breath of the Wild content. Until the next one, I've been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.